Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, our group, Aminul, Yusri and Fahim, want to present about Domain Eukarya 2, Part B, Kingdom Animalia, which consists Phylum Platyhelminthes, Phylum Nematoda, Phylum Annelida. So, we're going to start with characteristic of Phylum Platyhelminthes. Characteristic of Phylum Platyhelminthes, also known as flatworms. It has soft bodies, unsegmented and flattened dorsoventrally. It also bilaterally symmetrical and assimilate, which means no internal body cavity. This phylum is tribloblastic animals which possess three cell layers known as ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. This phylum also exhibits civilizations, which means sense organs are concentrated at the anterior ends and head. It has ladder-like nervous system which comprise a pair of anterior ganglia and serve as brain. Next, we're gonna talk about the other characteristic of Phylum Platyhelminthes. This Phylum Platyhelminthes digestive system is incomplete. The gut is sacked with a single opening. Pharynx extends for food gathering. The excretion and osmoregulation are controlled by selective flame cells located in photonephridia. Most are hermaphrodites, both females and males reproductive organs present in adult worms. This phylum reproduction are asexual and sexual. Next, we're gonna talk about the classification of Platyhelminthes. There are four classes in Platyhelminthes. There is class Cestoda, class Trematoda, class Tubularia, and class Monogenea. We're gonna take a deep look about class Cestoda. Class Cestoda, also known as endoparasitic tapeworms, which live in digestive tract of muscle tissue of various animals. This body class has three regions, that is collects the head, neck, and a series of repetitive segments called proglottids. The head of this class have suckers unable to attach to host intestine. Each proglottid has male and female organs known as hermaphrodites. This class covered with thick cuticle and lack of digestive system.
Now let us go to the next class, which is class Nematoda. The class Nematoda is a leaf-like parasitic flukes. The example of this class is blood flukes, river flukes, and lung flukes. Flukes have a simple digestive system. It has mouth at anterior end and one or more suckers surrounding the mouth for the attachment to the host. It also sucks blood and tissue fluids from their host. Some example of the species from this class is called Fasciola hepatica, a liver flukes. It infects liver of various mammals and can cause disease called fasciculosis. Next on, we go to the class Tubularia, members of planarians, a free-living Dugacia. It is a carnivorous organism that commonly found in fresh water. It has a blunt and arrow-shaped head and auricles, a sense organ to detect potential foods and enemies. It also has two eye spots, which has a behavior of photoreceptor. It is sensitive to light. The way they take in the food is using a tube-like pharynx located in the center of ventral surface. In addition, they also undergo osmoregulation, which is maintained by photonephridia. So after we go through all the classification of Platyhelminthes, we can conclude that the Platyhelminthes is a parasite worms. Platyhelminthes, especially castodes and flukes, causes important disease in humans and livestock. Some diseases that they suffer is called schistosomiasis, a snail fever. An important Platyhelminthes disease that cause suffering and some death in tropical countries. Other than that, we have neurocysticercosis, which a larva of pork tapeworm penetrates the central nervous system and cause a major acquired epilepsy worldwide.
Now, let's talk about the characteristics of phylum Nematoda. Nematodes are known as roundworms, where many of which are parasitic. It is bilaterally symmetrical and an unsegmented worms. As you can see from the image, it has an elongated body, cylindrical and tapered at both ends. It is also covered with tough flexible cuticles, which gives protection and body shapes, on which molds as the worm grows. Most phylum Nematoda are dioecious, which means that the organism have the male and female reproductive organs in a separate body. Next, phylum Nematoda has a complete digestive system with a mouth and anus for both male and female. It also does not possess organs for circulation and excretion. But how are they able to be dissolved? Well, the answer is the diffuse gas can be dissolved directly through the body wall. Phylum Nematoda is also said to be triploblastic and pseudocolumate, which means that the body cavity are incompletely lined with mesoderm. Its internal organs are suspended within the fluid-filled pseudocolumn. The fluid-filled pseudocolumn are known to function as hydrostatic skeleton and transport nutrient. Now let's talk about Brugia malai. Brugia malai is a roundworm nematode which causes lymphatic filariasis or elephantiasis. Brugia malai is transmitted by mosquitoes that is restricted to Southeast Asia. The adult worms of Brugia malai reside in lymphatic vessels causing blockage. The lymphatic fluid cannot flow through the vessels and causing the limbs to swell. And this is what causes the lymphatic filariasis or elephantiasis. Well, the show has been a tiring one, so I'll pass it to the next presenter.
Okay, so now let's move to the next part, which is phylum Annelida. Phylum Annelida is basically an annelids or worms that we see often when we dig a hole on the soil. It is basically a common worms that we see in our daily lives, such as earthworms, polychaete worms, and leeches. Polychaete worms is a worms that lives underwater, and leeches is a flattened worm that sucks our blood, predatory worms. The annelids contain a segmented body, both externally and internally. For the internal segmented body, it is separated by the septa, and for the external segmented body, it is separated by the annelid. And each of these segments contains the same sets of organs. The segmentation of the annelids is called metamerisms, which helps to control the movements of the annelids by separate segments independently. So the body wall of the annelids is made up of a circular and longitudinal muscles. Its body is covered by a pliant cuticle which may have a chitinous hair-like structure called setae or chetae. This hair structure is present in earthworm and polychaete worms, but it does not present in leeches because leeches has a smooth surface of its outer body. Annelids is a triploblastic and it is a bilateral symmetry. What is a bilateral symmetry? Bilateral symmetry is when we cut them in half and we see both sides of the body of the annelids. It contains an organ, and the annelids are well-developed column and organs are well-developed. The annelids can be both monoecious or dioecious. Monoecious is where a plant or invertebrate animals that have both female and male reproductive organs in the same individual, whereas the dioecious is where they have the male and female reproductive organs in different individuals. The monoecious can be also called as an hermaphrodite. It also has an excretory system which eliminates unwanted materials from their body through nephridia. So next we go to the classification of Annelida. A phylum Annelida is distinguished to a three class, which is class Oligochaeta, class Polychaete, and class Hirudinea. So for the first class of Annelida, which is a class of Oligochaeta, an example of class Oligochaeta is like earthworms. Each segment has 4 pairs of seta, and it does not have a well-developed head. For the nervous systems, it has simple brain and nerve cords, but instead they have complex and a complete digestive system, which they enter their food through their mouths and excrete them through their anus. And it has no respiratory organs. It does not have lungs or anything else. The oxygen gas and carbon dioxide gas diffuse directly through its skin. Just like I said earlier, the Oligochaeta is a hermaphrodite, which they have both female and male reproductive organs in the same individuals. They have both testes and ovaries. However, they still require 2 worms to mate and reproduce, which one acts as a male and one acts as a female. The way they mate is like they lie parallel to each other, but instead facing the opposite direction, and they reproduce through an organ called scutellum, and the sperm is exchanged and stored in a sac. For the next class, which is class Polychaeta or class Polychaete, this class is a free living marine worms such as ragworms or clamworms. The Polychaete has well developed head and sense organ. They have well developed eyes, well developed antenna, and well developed sensory bulbs. The Polychaete has many setae that attach to the parapodia, which is a pedal-like appendage found in most segments. Parapodia is used for the Polychaeta to swim. Also, they act as a respiratory organs. Next on, the last class of phylum Annelida, which is class Hirudinea. As we know, the members of this class is actually leeches, a carnivorous or parasites worms that sucks on a host's blood for their food. But actually, the class Hirudinea differs from the other class, which is Oligochaetes and Polychaetes. What makes them different is that they have neither seta or parapodia. They don't have a segmented body, because the body that they have is dorsoventrally flattened, with sucker at both anterior and posterior, which they use one for feeding and the other one they use for locomotion. After we see all the classification of annelids, we can conclude that the annelids has its own role to the environment, especially for the earthworms. The earthworm is important in the construction and fertility maintenance of the soil, as it brings up nutrients to the surface layer of the soil and assists in the breakdown of organic matter in or on the surface of the soil. As they move, the earthworms aerate the soil and enrich it with nitrogenous waste that they excrete through the nephridia, and it performs a burrowing actions which allows air to penetrate the soil and provide a channel for water to drain and enter. All of this will allow the plant on the soil to absorb the water easily and helps them in terms of growth. So that's all for the topics that we have covered. Thank you and Bye bye.